Welcome back to Part 2 of Beneath the Forgotten Bridge. If you're just joining us, this story began beneath a forgotten bridge, where a cartographer named Maya discovered notebooks filled with other people's lives. In Part 1, we listened as the bridge became a gathering place, for stories, for healing, for a single night of shared celebration. And then the festival ended. The lanterns came down. The paper boats drifted out of sight. What remained was the river, moving steadily forward. Maya returned to her usual place beneath the central arch. She opened her notebook, and the work continued. Days softened into routine. Afternoons stretched long and warm, and without marking the moment it began, summer took hold. Summer passed in a blur of long, lazy afternoons beneath the bridge. Maya's notebooks multiplied. She developed a system for organizing them, by date, by theme, by the recurring characters whose stories wove in and out of the chronicles. She began to see the bridge not just as a physical location, but as a character in its own right, with moods and presence and influence. On hot days, the bridge provided shade and cool air rising off the water. Children came to swim in the pool beneath the arches, and Maya wrote about their fearless joy, their unself-conscious delight in simple pleasures. On rainy days, the bridge became a shelter, and people would huddle beneath the arches, watching the drops patter on the river's surface. And somehow the rain made them more willing to share their deeper stories, their more vulnerable truths. Jennifer, the former attorney, decided to stay in Millbrook permanently. She rented a small house near the river and started a consulting business, helping other burned-out professionals transition to more balanced lives. She credited the bridge with saving her, though Maya always insisted the bridge had simply provided the space. Jennifer had saved herself. Marcus began performing again, small gigs at local coffee shops and bars. He wrote a song called Beneath the Forgotten Bridge that became locally famous. People who heard it would seek out the bridge, curious about the place that could inspire such haunting, beautiful music. Thomas, the veteran, brought other veterans to the bridge. They formed an informal support group, meeting every week beneath the arches to talk about their experiences, their struggles, their hope for healing. Maya gave them space, didn't record those stories unless specifically invited to. Some things were sacred even beyond the act of witnessing. As autumn arrived, the willow trees turned gold, and their leaves fell into the river, floating downstream like tiny boats. Maya developed a tradition of writing seasonal summaries, attempting to capture the overall emotional tenor of each period at the bridge. September 2026. Autumn brings a melancholy to the bridge. People come here to process endings. Summer ending, relationships ending, lives ending. I recorded more stories about death and loss this month than any previous month, but there's beauty in the sadness too. The falling leaves remind us that letting go is natural, necessary, part of the cycle. Nothing lasts forever, but everything matters while it's here. One October afternoon, a film crew arrived at the bridge. They'd heard about Maya's work and wanted to do a documentary segment on the bridge and its keeper. Maya's first instinct was to refuse. This felt private, sacred, not something to be broadcast. But after thinking about it, she agreed with conditions. They could film the bridge, could interview her about the work, but they couldn't include anyone's stories without explicit permission, and they couldn't reveal the location specifically enough that the bridge would become overrun with curiosity seekers. The documentary aired in November on a regional PBS station. Maya watched it at Jennifer's house, surrounded by other regular bridgegoers. She barely recognized herself on screen. The woman being interviewed seemed calmer, more centered than she remembered being. The bridge looked beautiful in the footage, mysterious and timeless. After the documentary aired, a few more people sought out the bridge. Most came once, looked around, took some photos, and left. But a handful stayed, understanding instinctively what the place was for. They became part of the growing community of bridgekeepers, as Maya had started thinking of them. People who felt called to witness, to listen, to hold space for stories. Winter came again, Maya's second winter as keeper. She felt more prepared this time, with better gear and a deeper understanding of how the bridge's energy shifted with the seasons. Winter at the bridge was sparse, quiet, introspective. People came less frequently, but those who came needed it more desperately. There was a woman who came every day in January, always at dawn, always alone. She would stand on the bridge for exactly 10 minutes, then leave without a word. Maya never approached her, sensing that the woman needed privacy more than witness. But she wondered about her story, about what brought her to bridge with such regularity, about what she was processing or mourning or hoping for. On the first day of spring, the woman finally came beneath the arches. "I've been watching you," she said to Maya. "Watching you sit here day after day, winter and summer, rain and shine. I've been trying to understand what you're doing, why you're here." "I'm listening," Maya said simply. "Recording, bearing witness." The woman nodded slowly. "I think I need to tell you my story. I think I need someone to hear it." Her name was Catherine. She had lost her son 2 years ago. A car accident, sudden and senseless. She'd been coming to the bridge every morning because it was the last place she'd seen him alive. He'd been jogging, had stopped on the bridge to wave to her as she drove past on her way to work. An hour later, he was gone. "I kept coming back," Catherine said, tears streaming down her face. "I kept thinking if I stood here long enough, I could undo it somehow. I could wave to him again, and this time I'd stop the car. I'd tell him I loved him. I'd warn him about what was coming." Maya listened and wrote, her own tears falling onto the page. When Catherine finished, Maya said quietly, "The river can't change what happened, but it can carry some of the weight of it. That's what it does. It takes what we can't hold anymore and carries it downstream for us." Catherine stayed beneath the bridge for hours that day, and when she left, she looked lighter somehow. Not happy, grief doesn't work that way, but less burdened. She kept coming to the bridge, but not every day anymore. And sometimes, instead of standing alone on the span, she would sit with Maya and talk about her son, remembering him not just in his death, but in his life. Spring brought renewal to the bridge and to Maya herself. She realized she'd been keeping the chronicles for 18 months now. 18 months of stories, of lives witnessed, of hearts mapped. The work had changed her completely. She was no longer the rigid, precise cartographer who had arrived in Millbrook. She became something else, a keeper of memories, a guardian of stories, a witness to the beautiful, terrible, ordinary, extraordinary flow of human life. One warm April afternoon, Maya was surprised by a visitor, a young woman, perhaps 25, with a backpack and nervous energy. "Are you the one who writes the stories?" the young woman asked. Maya nodded. "My grandmother told me about you, about this bridge. She said you recorded her story last winter. Her name was Catherine." Maya's heart jumped. "Catherine. Yes, I know her." The young woman sat down beside Maya. "She died last week. Heart attack. Very sudden. But before she died, she told me about you, about the bridge, about how you'd helped her finally begin to heal from losing my uncle. She said I should come here if I ever needed to talk to someone, if I ever needed to tell my story." "I'm so sorry for your loss," Maya said gently. The young woman, her name was Emma, nodded. "I wanted to ask you the story you wrote about my grandmother. Could I read it?" Maya hesitated. The notebooks weren't meant to be private, exactly, but they weren't meant to be freely browsed either. But something in Emma's face, in her need, made Maya nod. She found Catherine's entry from that cold March morning and handed it to Emma. Emma read it slowly, carefully, tears running down her face. When she finished, she looked up at Maya with wonder. This is her. This is exactly her, exactly what she was feeling. I thought I knew her, but this helps me understand what she went through after Uncle Michael died. She handed the notebook back. Thank you. Thank you for seeing her, for recording this. It feels like she's still here somehow, still speaking. After Emma left, Maya sat for a long time thinking about the unexpected ways stories ripple forward. Catherine had come to the bridge carrying unbearable grief. Maya had witnessed that grief, recorded it, helped Catherine carry it. And now, years later, that act of witness was comforting Catherine's granddaughter. The work mattered in ways Maya couldn't have predicted. That evening, Maya climbed onto the bridge and stood at its center, looking downstream. The water flowed past, endless and patient. carrying everything toward the sea. Somewhere downstream, all the paper boats from the Solstice Festival had long since dissolved, their wishes absorbed into the water, becoming part of the river's memory. She thought about all the people whose stories lived in her notebooks now. Hundreds of them, maybe thousands if you counted every person mentioned. All these lives, touching the bridge and being touched by it in return. All these stories that might have been lost, forgotten, but instead were preserved, witnessed, honored. Maya's third year as keeper brought unexpected challenges. Her mother, who lived in Ohio, became ill and needed help. Maya spent months traveling back and forth, trying to be present for her mother while also maintaining her responsibilities at the bridge. It was exhausting, and for the first time, she understood why Robert Chen's entries had become shakier toward the end. Life doesn't pause for sacred work. Life demands everything. During her absences, other people stepped up. Jennifer kept watch over the bridge, sitting beneath the arches when she could, though she didn't write the stories down. She said that was Maya's gift, not hers. Marcus came regularly, playing his guitar for anyone who happened by. Thomas and his veteran friends maintained the physical space, clearing debris after storms, keeping the paths clear. The bridge had become more than just Maya's project. It had become a community trust, something that belonged to all of them. Maya's mother died in October, peacefully, with Maya at her bedside. Maya spent a week in Ohio handling arrangements, then returned to Millbrook feeling hollowed out and ancient. She went straight to the bridge, sat beneath the central arch, and wept for hours. The river flowed past, indifferent and compassionate in equal measure, carrying her grief downstream along with everyone else's. Sarah found her there as evening fell. "I heard about your mother. I'm sorry." Maya nodded, unable to speak. Sarah sat beside her. "My father used to say that the river teaches us about continuity. One drop of water joins the river, flows downstream, reaches the ocean, evaporates, falls as rain, and returns to the river. Nothing is really lost. It just changes form." "Do you believe that?" Maya asked. Sarah considered. "I believe that the love we give and receive never disappears. I believe that the stories we tell and the lives we witness echo forward through time. I believe that your mother's love is still here, just in a different form. Does that help?" "Maybe," Maya said. "Ask me again in a year." Winter arrived early that year, hard and cold. Maya bundled up and continued her work, but she felt the weight of grief slowing her down, making everything harder. The stories still came, but they felt heavier now. Everyone who came to the bridge seemed to be carrying sorrow. Or maybe, Maya thought, she was just more attuned to sorrow now. Maybe grief had opened her to the depths of other people's pain in ways she hadn't fully understood before. On the winter solstice, the darkest day of the year, Maya organized another gathering at the bridge. Smaller than the summer festival, quieter, but meaningful. People brought candles and lanterns. They shared warm drinks and food. And they told stories about the people they'd lost, parents and partners, children and friends, the beloved dead who lived on in memory. It was sad and beautiful and deeply comforting. Maya realized that the bridge had become a place where people felt safe to grieve, safe to be vulnerable, safe to acknowledge the reality of loss without trying to fix it or rush past it. The river flowed on regardless of human sorrow, and somehow that was more comforting than any platitude could be. As the new year arrived, Maya felt herself slowly emerging from the fog of grief. Her mother's death had changed her, but she was still here, still breathing, still capable of bearing witness to other lives. She threw herself back into the work with renewed dedication. She started teaching workshops at the local library about the art of listening, about how to create space for stories, about the power of witness. 12 people attended the first workshop, then 20 at the second, then 30. People were hungry for this, she realized. Hungry for authentic connection, for the opportunity to be truly seen and heard. Some of her students began keeping their own chronicles, recording stories from their neighborhoods, their workplaces, their families. The practice was spreading, rippling outward from the bridge like circles on water. In spring, Maya received an email from a publisher in New York. They'd seen the PBS documentary and wanted to know if she considered writing a book about her experiences at the bridge. Not the stories themselves. Those belonged to people who'd shared them, but about the practice of witnessing, the art of listening, the transformative power of creating space for human connection. Maya thought about it for a long time. Part of her wanted to refuse, wanted to keep the work small and local and pure. But another part of her recognized an opportunity to share what she'd learned, to perhaps inspire others to create their own forgotten bridges, their own spaces of witness and healing. She said yes to the book. Writing it was harder than she expected. How do you capture the essence of sitting beside flowing water, of listening to stories that break your heart and remake it stronger? How do you explain the magic of witness without making it sound mystical or precious or false? Maya wrote and rewrote, struggling to find the right balance between instruction and inspiration, between practical guidance and poetic truth. She worked on the book for months, mostly in the evenings after her time at the bridge. Finally, in late summer, she finished the manuscript and sent it off to her editor. Then she returned to the bridge and sat beneath the arches, feeling oddly empty. The book had consumed so much of her energy and attention. Now what? The answer came in the form of Sarah, who arrived at the bridge with a proposal. "I've been thinking," Sarah said. "This work can't depend on one person forever. We need to create some kind of structure, some way to ensure the bridge is cared for and the chronicles are preserved even after you and I are gone." Together, they drafted plans for the Forgotten Bridge Foundation, a small nonprofit dedicated to maintaining the bridge and supporting the practice of witnessing and story-keeping. They recruited board members from the regular bridge community, Jennifer, Marcus, Thomas, and others who understood the work and were committed to its continuation. The foundation launched on the 5th anniversary of Maya's arrival in Millbrook. They held a celebration at the bridge, during which Maya read from her notebooks and people shared their favorite bridge memories. Sarah officially donated her father's original chronicles to the foundation's archive. They announced plans to create a small education center near the bridge where people could learn about the history of the place and the practice of witnessing. That evening, as the celebration wound down and people drifted away, Maya stood at the center of the bridge and looked downstream. 5 years. She'd been keeping the chronicles for 5 years. In that time, she'd filled 73 notebooks. She'd witnessed thousands of stories. She'd watched the bridge transform from a forgotten place into a beating heart of community connection. But more importantly, she'd transformed. The woman standing on this bridge now bore little resemblance to the burned-out cartographer who'd stumbled upon it half a decade ago. She'd learned to listen not just with her ears, but with her whole being. She'd learned that the most important maps are the ones we draw of human hearts. She'd learned that bearing witness to another person's story is both the simplest and most profound thing one human can do for another. The river flowed past, as it had for millions of years, as it would for millions more. Maya took out her notebook and wrote, September 24th, 2030. 5 years as keeper of the bridge. 5 years of stories, of listening, of learning. The work continues, will always continue, because human beings will always need to be seen, to be heard, to know that their lives matter. Today I thought about Robert Chun, who started this work 68 years ago. I thought about all the people who sat beneath these arches and poured out their hearts. I thought about the river, endlessly patient, endlessly accepting, carrying all our stories downstream to the sea. I don't know how much longer I'll keep the chronicles. Maybe another 5 years, maybe 20, maybe for the rest of my life. But I know this. The work will continue after I'm gone. Others will come. Others will listen. The bridge will remain, and the river will flow, and human stories will continue to need witnesses. That's enough. That's everything. Maya closed her notebook and sat for a long time, listening to the water sing its endless song. Above her, stars began to appear in the darkening sky, ancient light traveling across impossible distances to reach her eyes. Around her, the bridge stood solid and sure, stone and mortar holding firm against time and weather and the ceaseless flow of the river. And beneath it all, the water flowed, carrying stories downstream, carrying sorrows out to sea, bringing new water, new stories, new possibilities with every passing moment. Always changing, always the same. Like the bridge, like the stories, like the work of witnessing itself. Forever flowing, forever listening, forever bearing witness to the beautiful, terrible, sacred fact of human existence. Maya smiled in the darkness and whispered to the river, "Thank you for teaching me to listen." The water answered with its patient, eternal song, and Maya sat beneath the forgotten bridge and let it carry her, too gently downstream toward whatever came next. 10 years after Maya first discovered the bridge, a young man named James arrived in Millbrook. He was 26 years old, recently graduated from library science school, and desperately in need of a quiet place to figure out what he wanted from life. He'd heard about the bridge from a friend who'd read Maya's book, Beneath the Forgotten Bridge, The Art of Witnessing. The book had moved him deeply, made him think about the power of stories and the importance of human connection. On a whim, he decided to visit Millbrook to see the bridge for himself. He found it on a gray afternoon in November, following the directions in the back of Maya's book. The bridge looked exactly as described. Graceful stone arches spanning the quiet river, willow trees trailing their branches in the current, moss and ivy softening the stonework. And there, beneath the central arch, was an older woman with silver-streaked hair, writing in a notebook. James approached hesitantly. "Are you Maya?" The woman looked up and smiled. "I am, and you must be someone looking for a story." James sat down beside her. "Actually, I'm looking for a purpose. I read your book. I couldn't stop thinking about it. I want to learn how to do what you do, how to listen, how to witness, how to create space for people's stories." Maya studied him carefully. "It's not easy work. It asks everything of you. It changes you completely." "I know," James said. "I think that's exactly what I need." Maya closed her notebook and looked out at the flowing water. "I'm 60 years old now," she said. "I've been keeping these chronicles for 15 years. I always knew I'd need to pass the work on eventually. I've been waiting for the right person to arrive." She turned to James. "Are you the right person?" James didn't answer immediately. He looked at the bridge, at the river, at the notebook stacked in the wooden box. He felt something stirring in his chest. Recognition, calling, the strange certainty that he'd been meant to find this place. "I think I might be," he said finally. Maya smiled. "Then let's begin." She opened a new notebook and handed it to James along with a pen. "The first lesson is this. Listen without trying to fix. Listen without judging. Listen as if this might be the only time in this person's life that someone truly hears them. Can you do that?" "I can try," James said. "That's all anyone can do," Maya said. "Try and practice and keep trying." They sat together beneath the bridge as the afternoon light faded. Maya told James about Robert Chun and Sarah and the long lineage of witnesses who had kept these chronicles. She explained the rituals and rhythms of the work. She shared what she learned about creating space for stories, about the difference between listening to respond and listening to understand. As darkness fell, Maya stood to leave. "Come back tomorrow," she told James. "Come back every day. Sit here, listen, right? Learn from the river. Learn from the people who come. Learn from the bridge itself. And when you're ready, when you truly understand what this work is, I'll pass the notebooks to you officially." James returned the next day, and the next, and the next. He sat beside Maya and watched how she welcomed people, how she created an atmosphere of safety and acceptance, how she wrote with such care and attention to detail. He practiced listening without interrupting, without offering solutions, without making the conversation about himself. Slowly, people began to share their stories with him, too. He wrote them down with shaking hands at first, terrified of getting it wrong, of not doing justice to the trust being placed in him. But gradually, he found his rhythm, his voice, his own way of witnessing. On the first day of spring, Maya made it official. In front of the gathered bridge community, she handed the wooden box of notebooks to James. "These are yours now," she said. "All the stories, all the responsibility, all the privilege of bearing witness. Guard them well, honor them, continue the work." James accepted the box with tears in his eyes. "I will. I promise." Maya placed her hand on his shoulder. "I know you will. The river chose you, just as it chose me, just as it chose Robert Chin before me. Trust the work." Trust yourself. And remember, you're never really alone here. All of us who've kept these chronicles, we're with you, in the flow of the river, in the stones of the bridge, in the stories themselves. She stepped back and looked at the bridge, at the community gathered around it, at James clutching the box of notebooks. 15 years of her life were contained in those pages, but she felt no reluctance in passing them on. The work had never really been hers. She had just been its steward for a time. Now it belonged to James, and someday it would belong to someone else, and so on, for as long as the bridge stood and the river flowed. Maya walked away from the bridge that day and didn't look back. She'd done her part. She'd listened, witnessed, recorded. She'd helped create something lasting. Now it was time to see what else life had to offer, what other stories she might live instead of recording. Behind her, James sat beneath the central arch of the forgotten bridge and opened a new notebook. At the top of the first page, he wrote, "The Bridge Chronicles continued, March 20th, 2040. James Chun, keeper." Chun. He'd been surprised to learn he was Robert Chen's great-grandson, that his own ancestor had started this work 3/4 of a century ago. It felt like destiny, like a circle completing itself. But also, James knew it was just a beginning, his chance to listen, to witness, to matter. He looked out at the flowing water and smiled. The river had stories to tell, and he was ready to hear them. The end. Sleep well, dear reader. May your dreams be gentle, and may you wake knowing that your story matters too. When you return, another story will be waiting. Until then, good night.